Hi everyone, I'm Jamila. I'm a solutions architect at AWS, and I'm here to talk about how you can use Amazon S3, which is our storage service, to utilize in IoT use cases. So one of our customers wanted to monitor the building occupancy and see with using IoT devices and stream it live to AWS, store the data, and perform some analytics on that. So um, I built a solution. I designed the diagram, etc., and then I decided to publish it for wider use case. While the real customer use case was they wanted to see the prototype how it looks like on AWS. Um, in the real life, in production environment, they had their own IoT devices. So in the blog post that I'm going to share with you all, I'm using Raspberry Pi, which is a small board computer, and a passive infrared sensor which detects the motion, and then after that all the data generated with Raspberry Pi, it will be sent to AWS. I'm using some AWS IoT services that I'm not going to discuss in depth today, but just as a high overview, one of our AWS IoT service, which is called IoT Core, connects the Raspberry Pi and the passive infrared sensor with AWS Cloud, so that once the data is generated live, you can stream it to the cloud in real time, and then you can store it in Amazon S3. So I'm going to share the link in the chat, and if one of my colleagues please can
Yeah, I'll do
share
that.
the screen. Yeah, thank you, that will be great, because I am
So
having
this
some
is the
technical.
link, and let me open it into, give me a minute, please. So everyone, this is a use case for a customer. It's a prototype we are talking about here, but obviously customer can implement it in a different manner. So let me quickly make the screen available and we will get started from there. Yeah,
Yeah, cool. So if you scroll down please,
sure.
you will be able to see the simple diagram that I architected when I joined AWS. It was like around last year. So you see the Raspberry Pi on the left, which is generating some data in real time, and then some other services, including AWS IoT services, IoT Core, IoT Rule, where you set your rule that once you get any data from Raspberry Pi, send it to Amazon S3, which is in the middle. You see Amazon Kinesis Data Firehose, which is our real-time data streaming service. And then all the data, once it's been captured from Raspberry Pi, it will be sent and stored in Amazon S3. You will see other services like AWS Glue and Athena. I'm not going to talk about it, but rather I'm preferring to highlight Amazon S3's capabilities, that the data has been generated from Raspberry Pi. It was stored in S3, and this gives the customers a capability to perform data analytics using S3 in itself. So in Amazon S3, we had you will see lots of kind of objects and the data points that is coming from Raspberry Pi. Yeah, if you scroll down, you see how the Raspberry Pi was set. You see all the details. You will get a code snippet. What it is, what kind of data it is generating, like motion is detected or no motion, and then when the motion is detected, the red LED light will be turned on. And here is you will be able to see the IoT rule that we set for IoT Core, and then everything will be stored in Amazon S3. So the important part is that Amazon S3 as a storage service, it doesn't limit you what kind of data you can store. So you can store from across different resources, including IoT or other resources, or if you have any third-party connector, you can still connect the third-party connector with S3 and stream your data or bring your data from different resources and store it in Amazon S3. Other good point is that you can archive it, as Ashish mentioned mentioned earlier. You can archive your data. For example, you don't need a building occupancy data back in like 5 years ago. You will need it, for example, only for your once a year report. So you can archive it and save some cost on archival point as well. So the main point is that instead of creating relational or non-relational database, you can easily and in a cost-effective manner, you can store all this data in Amazon S3. And then if you scroll down, Ashish, I just want to show Amazon QuickSight part, which is our data visualization BI tool. There you will see that the data which is stored in Amazon S3, you can easily connect with either Amazon QuickSight or any other third-party providers, independent softwares, and then you can perform analysis. For example, how many people were in this part of the building and what is the data point. So you can drive the reports, you can make analysis based on this data. So this was the high overview of usage of Amazon S3 in IoT. Of course, we have many more resources, but it is just one of many. If you have any questions, please do let me know. And here I will stop talking and I will hand over to Ashish. Thank you.
Nice. It's an interesting use case. Like a Raspberry Pi is a nice way to get started, and then if you can bring that data to AWS, then possibilities are unlimited. I maybe when we get time, I'll show you one flight radar I built using Raspberry Pi. Like Jamila here has built a IoT core. I have used it for building uh, flight radar, live flight tracking, and again using S3 because S3 is a ubiquitous storage, very cheap comparatively, accessible over HTTP. You do not need any servers, and it's a much easier to get started. So maybe you don't want to implement the whole stuff as it is, but I would suggest that read it. Like, what are the possibilities to use S3 for? What can be achieved? What are the challenges we have faced, and how we solved it? And another part is integration, because as a solution architect you won't be working only with one individual service. You would be working with multiple services and they have to all connect together. So that is what is important for you to learn as a solution architect. So thanks, Jamila, for walking us through this. We would push this link into our resources page, so feel free to check it and let us know if you have any follow-up question. We'll try to answer as much as we can, but yes, we are still human, families to maintain, job to do, but we'll try our best to reach out to every one of you. Thank you, Jamila.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure.
Now, Alex is also going to walk us through some of the stuff related to uh, how customers use S3. This was one use case, but as I said, S3 is present everywhere, I would say. Anything you do, it has some footprint on S3, and Alex would help us today to make sure that how other customers are using. And these are some big names of the customer you would now hear from Alex. Thanks, Alex. Over to you.
All right. So what I'm going to do in this slots here now, we talked about S3, and this is one of the most fundamental services. It's very hard, to go around and not to use S3 when you're designing the architecture on AWS. And here I can just kind of picked up three big names from the industry, who of course use S3 behind the scene. You probably know all of them, and this is not the only examples of our customers who use S3. S3, as I said, can be found almost in any architecture. And so those three big guys here on the screen, what they do. So let's start with Coursera. Probably everyone knows Coursera, right? So Coursera is basically a company who provides online trainings, courses from different universities from all around the globe. And what they do with S3, they basically use S3 for hosting their website. So this use case we talked about, like S3 for hosting static content, they actually do that. The other example here is Airbnb, and those guys, what they do, they use S3 to store and serve their static assets. Like they particularly use it for storing 10 terabytes of user pictures. So those pictures you might see on the postings of different houses. So this is what they use it for. And then Netflix, of course. Netflix uses it for managing their storage, media storage infrastructure and asset management. So they also use S3 for it. And we talked a little bit about, that S3 is not only about, S3 is not only about media companies and not only about streaming some particular media content. It can be found all across the industries. It can be found in manufacturing, in data lakes, in anywhere where you need this expandable, reliable, simple storage. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through a bunch of architectural diagrams. Please don't freak out if you see like a little bit more complex architecture diagrams for the first time, but this is the reality. You're never going to use like one particular service without any context around it. And what I'm trying to do now is to just give you a little bit of a context how you can navigate those diagrams. So diagrams basically can be found also on AWS reference architectures. So they are publicly available. If you're gonna work with your customer, you'll end up with something like this. This is gonna be your solution for one or another problem. So let's see how we navigate this one. So this diagram, for example, here offers video on demand on AWS. So this, of course, offers more than, it consists more than just S3. S3 is one integral part of it, of course. Here and here you can see it. The first thing I would suggest how you can navigate the diagram, try to find where it all starts. Many times you'll have, those numbers like 1, 2, 3, and so forth. This is how the data flows, or these are the interactions inside the system, what kind of happens, like in which sequence. Try to find where data comes in or what triggers the system to do something. So here it's numbered and it's kind of easy to do, but in the most diagrams, it's somewhere on the left. So here, for example, the source, this is where data comes into the system. And as you can see, data kind of gets video from somewhere and stores it in S3. And the whole solution, what it does here, it grabs the video, converts it to different media formats, and then serves it to customers. So if you get like original video in your system, you start this whole, sorry, the wrong direction. You start this whole flow of different things. And then at the same time, when you're done, you don't need to keep this video in a kind of hot storage. You don't need to have like frequent access to it. So you can then upload it to Glacier, to Amazon S3 Glacier. This is what Ashish was talking about. Now, you can maybe even for now disregard what happens there inside this bigger picture, like step functions and so on. Maybe we will come later to those things in next sessions. Basically, what it does, it takes the media file and converts it using some particular services like Media Convert, for example. And then it brings it towards the delivery. So this is where our customers or users will gonna consume this video. So this is this part, the delivery in the end. And then again, Amazon S3 is one of the central services there. And Amazon S3 will deliver the data, those videos to end users, not directly this time, but via Amazon CloudFront. So Amazon CloudFront is basically a content delivery network, CDN. It will just cache the S3 content, and then through Amazon network, it will upload it to edge locations very close to the end users, and thus users will consume those files and from CloudFront. So this is one architecture. The other architecture I can present to you now is basically this one. This is in the world of accessibility. So you can design an application using this solution, which will read on screen things and then read it out loud. So it's kind of accessibility feature for visually impaired people. So how can we use it? Again, let's find first of all where it all starts, because otherwise, like, too many things going on in this diagram, right? So the first thing here on the left is where users interact with mobile application. So this is a mobile client, these are users. Now we have a little bit of a mental concept for how this whole thing kind of works, right? So our users, they have mobile phones, right? Now, from mobile clients, you will invoke AWS SDK. So it's just a bunch of libraries to communicate with services in AWS. One of the services we have here is S3, and S3 is also quite core service here. So first of all, you need to serve the application to the client. So then the application going to be like, files and static content and stuff like that. That's going to be our front end. In the front end, you might have a couple of other things, like, for example, Amazon Cognito for authentication, authorization. But then Amazon S3, you can use it for hosting your website, right? And then the other part here is, so we see here is like, clearly there are two parts of this system. And the second part of the system will kind of do the backend work, the heavy lifting, the machine learning, if you want, bit. We don't need to understand all these services here, but basically what they do, they would get the image from the screen of the user. They will convert it into the text, and then they will translate this text if necessary. And then with Poly, this is a voice generation service. They will create audio files, and then those files need to be stored somewhere. And again, you go to S3. So you see, it's completely different use cases, even inside one system, but we still use the same service. So you can't really work around and not gonna use S3 in your diagrams. And maybe one other example here. You're gonna get the slides, don't worry, and you can also walk later on a slower pace through those diagrams and see how it all works for you. So here, for example, we have the whole bunch of S3 buckets here in the bottom layer, and those are kind of interconnected with CloudFront. But in this particular scenario, CloudFront is not serving so it's not for downloading objects from S3, it's actually for uploading objects. Again, you can then utilize this end locations in CDN, in CloudFront, so that your data will travel not through the public internet, but through AWS network. Thus, the upload of the file will be faster.